Hello Treasure, I've got a new series of stories for you. These are by Alan Arlberg and Janet Arlberg, and they're called Funny Bones. These are really good, so I hope you enjoy them. This is how the story begins. On a dark, dark hill, there was a dark, dark town. In the dark, dark town, there was a dark, dark street. In the dark, dark street, there was a dark, dark house. In the dark, dark house, there was a dark, dark staircase. Down the dark, dark staircase, there was a dark, dark cellar. And in the dark, dark cellar, some skeletons lived. There was a big skeleton, a little skeleton, and a skeleton dog. What shall we do tonight? Said the big skeleton. Let's take the dog for a walk, said the little skeleton. So one night the big skeleton sat up in bed, he scratched his skull and thought, yeah, okay, we'll take the dog for a walk and we'll frighten somebody. That's a good idea, said the big skeleton. So this is what they did. So the big skeleton, the little skeleton and the dog skeleton left the dark, dark cellar, climbed the dark, dark staircase and stepped out into the dark, dark street. They walked past the houses and the shops. They walked past the zoo and the police station. Then they went into the park. The big skeleton scratched his skull. What shall we do now? He said. Let's play on the swings, said the little skeleton, and throw a stick for the dog and frighten somebody. Good idea, said the big skeleton. We'll frighten somebody. So the big skeleton, the little skeleton and the dog skeleton walked round the dark, dark pond, past the dark, dark tennis courts and up to the dark, dark swings. The big skeleton and the little skeleton played on the swings. Eek, 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 backwards and forwards. The swings always seem to creak when you go on them. Have you noticed? Then they threw a stick for the dog to play with. Suddenly something happened. The dog skeleton chased the stick, tripped over a park bench, bumped into a tree and ended up as a little pile of bones. Look at that, said the big skeleton. It's all come to pieces. Now what shall we do? Let's put him back together again, said the little skeleton. So the big skeleton and the little skeleton put the dog skeleton back together again. They sang a song while they did it. I wonder if you know it. The toe bone's connected to the foot bone. The foot bone's connected to the leg bone. And the leg bone's connected to the hip bone. The hip bone's connected to the backbone. And they put the bones back together to make the dog. Ooh, ooh, said the dog. That's a funny bark. Oh, is something wrong? Then they realised they'd got a bit mixed up. Is that a big toe? Said the little skeleton. Where does this one go? Said the big skeleton. Oh, said the dog. He was a bit jumbled up too. When they had finished, the big skeleton said, that dog looks a bit funny to me. So he does, said the little skeleton. We've got his tail on the wrong end. Oh no! And look, his head's turning in the wrong direction. Whoa, said the dog skeleton. He wasn't too happy. At last, The dog was properly put back together again, with his tail at the back and his head at the front, facing the right way round this time. So they all sang another song. These bones can bark again, can run in out on the park again, can frighten people in the dark again. These bones can do it all. They had such a lovely time. The big skeleton scratched his skull. That reminds me, he said. We forgot to frighten somebody. Well, we can do it on the way home, said the little skeleton. Oh, good idea, said the big skeleton. I wish we could find a nice little boy to frighten. I wish we had a nice old lady to frighten, said the little skeleton. So the big skeleton and the little skeleton and the dog skeleton left the dark, dark swings. They went out into the dark, dark town and tried to frighten somebody. The trouble was there wasn't anybody about. Everybody was in bed. Even the policemen in the police station were in bed. Even the animals in the zoo were fast asleep. But of course the skeletons were wide awake. What will we do? Who can we find to frighten? They tried to play on an elephant, but she wasn't having it. Good evening. Who's a cheeky boy then? Have a cup of tea. Pretty Polly. Put the kettle on. Put the kettle on. Pretty Polly. Who do you think that was? It was a parrot in the zoo. He'd woken up to see what was happening. Let's have a ride on the elephant then. Or shall we have a ride on the crocodile skeleton? They couldn't get close enough to either of them. Then when they were back on the street again, where they might find somebody, that's when the big skeleton said, "What shall we do now?" I know, the little skeleton. He scratched his skull. We can frighten each other. Well, that's better than nothing, said the big skeleton. What an idea. So the big skeleton said, I'm coming to get you. And he got hold of the little skeleton's foot. Oh, the little skeleton thought it was such good fun. And the big skeleton did manage to frighten him. Next, the dog skeleton had a turn. Meow, cried the little skeleton. The dog skeleton was a bit scared because he didn't like cats. Oh no, no. And the little skeleton jumped into the arms of the big skeleton. Oh, they had such fun. Ooh. Suddenly a coat on the washing line, it came to life. It was making some very strange noises and the arms were moving in the coat. But the little skeleton had hidden in the coat and that was his trick. Then they hid around corners, they frightened each other, they climbed up the lampposts and frightened each other, they jumped out of dustbins and frightened each other's all the way home. And that is how this story ends. On a dark, dark hill, there was a dark, dark town. In the dark, dark town, there was a dark, dark street. In the dark, dark street, there was a dark, dark house. In the dark, dark house, in the dark, dark house, there was a dark, dark staircase. And down the dark, dark staircase, there was a dark, dark cellar. And in the dark, dark cellar, some skeletons lived. Did you enjoy that, Treasure?